first time I heard Damien was on a compilation album. He sang the song Homegrown, which was a solo song of his. And I loved this voice, you know, he reminded me a little bit of Robert Plant, one of my favorite singers. But still it was different, you know, still his voice is very unique, I think. Later on I heard some of his other vocal parts on bands like Landmark and Threshold. And then they played here in Holland. And I went to a show to see Threshold and I saw him live. And he was just as great as on the album, maybe even better. I still remember they played this whole 2-hour show, you know, really heavy music. And at the end they did a ballad and he sang it perfectly. So after the show I went backstage and I remember, yeah, I don't know if it's a habit of him, but he pukes after gigs, you know, he gives him everything and then so he just came from the bathroom and I wanted to shake hands with him. He said, I just puked and I said, I don't care. So I shook his hand. And at that time I asked him to, if he wanted to sing on Ayreon. He didn't know Ayreon, so I sent him a couple of my albums. And well, luckily he was really impressed by my music. It was exactly the style that he liked. And he was also very fast in the studio and very, very emotional. I still remember I gave him my guide vocal and said, well, this is the melody. And he changed it completely. He just stood behind the mic and he improvised and he did it his own way. Luckily, you know, because it was much better than the stuff I wrote.
I hark back to olden days, to her and her magic ways, to souls in harmony, in an endless sea. The cruel wings of destiny carried you away from me and left a heart unstilled that never will be filled.
And when I was finished recording Damien, I knew that I had to work with him in the future, but because not only is he a great singer and not only does he fit perfectly on Ayreon, but he also turned into a really good friend of mine. Of course, I knew Anneke from her band The Gathering, and great band, great singer. And when I heard it, I knew I had to have her on Electric Castle. But she was very hard to convince, I have to say. I had to do my best, you know, give her a couple of calls, and she had to talk with the band and stuff like that. But finally, and luckily, she agreed. And she came over to the castle and I planned all day for her, you know. She had to, she played the part of the Egyptian and she had to do like 5 songs or something. So she came in and she sang, and 1.5 hours later, she was ready, you know. That was it. I mean, her pitch is perfect, her vibrato is beautiful. Well, simply a really great singer.
The fields of Yaru lie waiting for us all. Rejoice, the judges have ruled. We have been chosen to enter the great hall of Isis and Osiris.
The first time I heard Edward Rekers was when he had a huge hit with the band Kayak, with the song Ruthless Queen, and already then I loved this voice. What a great singer. And a couple of years later I had to do vocals for a Pink Floyd tribute album, and the other songs were sung by Edward, and I heard him sing again and I thought, oh, this guy, he's brilliant. And he is a true professional. He different from Damien, you know, Damien sings whatever he wants, whatever comes up, but Edward sings the melody exactly like I gave him, only a lot better, of course. And he's also got this beautiful, very clear voice and this beautiful vibrato. And same thing as with Anneke, he was finished within the hour.
Is this the end? Will we transcend the need for human pleasures? Will we abandon all our earthly treasures? Will mankind yield on the battlefield of natural selection to an inorganic digital perfection?
Well, of course, I knew Fish from his Merlion days. Needless to say, I've always been a big fan. Not only of his voice, but his whole charisma, you know, his whole personality. So for Electric Castle, I was looking for singers with a personality. And a journalist gave me the phone number of Fish, and I called him up, and he was interested, but it was hard to convince him. So it took me a couple of months to really convince him to be on the album, and I sent him a couple of my first 2 albums. And finally, I wanted to give up, you know. So I think I sent an email to his management. I said, well, within a week I have to decide whether I take him or another singer. And he called me up, and in his Scottish accent, you know, he's going like, "Hey Ayreon, is that right? You know, is that the way to pronounce your name?" And he said he was interested, so I flew to Scotland to work on the songs with him, because I had the part of the Highlander in mind for him. And of course, who am I as a Dutch guy to write lyrics for someone who's from Scotland? So I definitely wanted him to write his own lyrics, because I felt he would do a better job than me. And I also asked him to sing in his really Scottish accent, because I really like that. You know, reminds me of Star Trek, maybe, who knows. And then I went back to Scotland to his studio, and recorded. We recorded, I think, everything in like one day and one evening. And I can only say, what a character, you know. For instance, this part in Isis and Osiris, where he has to ad-lib, and he's doing this part about constellations, you know. And it's completely ad-libbed, you know. He didn't know, he was going to the mic, he said, "Okay, what do I have to talk about?" I said, "Well, you're alone in space, you don't know where you are." And he went up to the mic and he ad-libbed this whole thing. I can only say, what a character, what an amazing talent this guy is.
Can you see the stars? Can you recognize the constellations? If I could only see the hills that we're supposed to climb. Even the sunlight, it doesn't warm. How are we going to find our way? If we can't recognize the stars and we can't recognize the constellations, where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go?
The first time I heard Jay was on the first Bodine album, and I still think this album is one of the best albums ever made in its genre in Holland. Especially because of his vocals. He's got these very warm, big, bluesy vocals. Reminds me a bit of that other great singer, David Coverdale. But still, Jay has got his own definite style. So I joined Bodine, but then Jay was already out of the band, so I never had the pleasure of being in a band with him. But when I did the first Ayreon album, Final Experiment, I really wanted Jay to sing on that album. You know, I really wanted this big bluesy voice, which is weird, you know, because I do prog music, I do metal music, but if you combine blues with prog, you get something original. I rang him up and I said, well, I want you to play a historical character. So first off, I had this gangster in mind for him. I thought he was really this American gangster type. But then he said, no, I'm a big fan of Conan the Barbarian. So I said, okay, you'll be a barbarian. I also like his over-the-top lyrics that he wrote for Bodine. So I asked him to write lyrics for one song, Amazing Flight, in Space, which is the introduction of the barbarian character.
I shook city walls and towers, wreaking havoc in the streets. Burned palaces of cowardly kings, not a one stood up to me. Fools. Bear bloody banners in blazing skies, brandish battle axe and broadsword. Let drums of glory sound like thunder. Hail, barbaric warlord!
Yay, tell him, Jay. A friend of mine sent me an album of Omega, a Hungarian band, in which Edwin Baloch sings. because my friend told me that Edwin Beloch was interested to sing on Ayreon. I listened to the album, I really liked it, but I wasn't completely convinced because I thought his vocal parts were a bit too low. But anyway, I could hear that he was a very good singer, so I invited him to my place and he came in, he grabbed the acoustic guitar and he started singing, and I was like, yes, I want him.
Slaves for eternity, down in the underworld, the doors of Orcus. I call on Jupiter, the ruler of the gods. Show us the way from damnation to salvation.
He played the Roman, and it was really great because he came in and he really did his homework. You know, he's been watching movies and reading stuff on the internet about Romans, and it was also a period he was very interested in, and not only because of Monty Python, because he's a big Monty Python fan as me. And very, very powerful singer and a Dutch guy, so great. I read in a Dutch metal magazine called Aardschok, I read an interview with a band called Within Temptation. Usually bands name their influences and it's like Metallica or Deep Purple or Black Sabbath, you know, but they said our influences are Ayreon, and I was like, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not. So I saw that they were playing on a big festival in Holland. I went to this festival and I saw them play live, and afterwards I went to I met them backstage, and and she was going like, yeah, we really love your albums and you've been a big influence. I said, well, that's very good because I like your voice. Would you like to be on Ayreon? She said, yeah, sure.
Spirits flying, I soar on the breeze. Mortals dying, I soar on the breeze into the sun.
Okay. So she came to my studio, and she also brought her boyfriend, who did the grunts in Within Temptation, and also George Oosthoek, who is the grunter of Orphanage.
I am the brave, superior of rust and ice. I am the way, the forgiver of those who sighs. I am the star, I blow the devil's eye. I am the fire, the source of lust and desire.
We seed the universe with the milk of 1,000,000 moons. You are that seed. Your earth is our experiment. We vanquished the dinosaurs with the careless trajectory of a child's lost meteorite. We peopled your planet to experience your emotions, such feelings lost to us eons ago.
At a certain point I got really interested in the music of the 60s, mainly because of the Beatles and the Monkees and Donovan and the Kinks and all these bands. So I started collecting albums from the 60s. And I also a lot of compilation albums. And on one of these compilation albums I heard a band called Kaleidoscope. And I loved this singer of this band so much, but I knew nothing about Kaleidoscope. And in those days there was no internet, so I couldn't just look it up. So for years I've been looking for Kaleidoscope albums, and even went to England to find them, and I did find them. I bought I think like for 50 or for £100 I bought his albums. I wrote a letter to the record company in Japan asking them if they could bring me in contact with Peter. And I still remember, you know, I went to the post box and I got this letter from Peter Daltrey. And I went to my wife, I said, I got a letter of Peter Daltrey, you know. And in it he said that he thanked me for all the compliments I made him. He asked me if I wanted to play on one of his new albums or one of his new songs. And I did, you know, I played a solo on one of his songs. And as I was doing the Electric Castle, I really wanted to work with a narrator, because for instance, if you take War of the Worlds, you know, what Richard Burton did on this album was simply amazing, really great. So I wanted a great narrator, and I remember that on one of the Kaleidoscope albums, he did a song where he told a fairy tale, which I really liked. So I asked him if he wanted to do narration on Electric Castle. And I also really like his lyrics, and he also writes these really over-the-top lyrics. So I also asked him to write lyrics for the alien character, Forever of the Stars. That's the character he portrays on the album.
How we envied you, your loves and passions, your dangerous desires. The fires of your emotions gleamed like lost beacons in the darkened depths of the fathomless universe. And 8 of you, plucked from time, not randomly, you understand, representatives of your world's turbulent history, we have observed your tribulations from nameless nebulae. The experiment is over. I am weary now, so tired. I too am far from home. Open the gate, complete the circle. You won't remember, you won't recall, for I am only the air that you breathe, after all.
Orange, yellow, tangerine, the acid queen in a psychedelic scene. Oh, creatures not chocolate brown, I'm upside down on a cosmic eider down.
What the hell is an eider down?
Ivory, milky, chalky white, the stars ignite, I vanish in the light that burns so bright.